there was a time where I was in that position. I had looked up, it was like, what's the benefits of like masturbation? And then like I got tricked into thinking, okay, like this is supposed to be good for me. I know this, that everyone says this is a sin, but get Google saying it's good for me.
Ooh, man, the enemy is working.
Exactly. So I'm sitting there like I made an excuse for myself. But as soon as I got that excuse and I got that approval, I ran with it.
Oh my gosh, if we think about it, this is how the enemy operates. The enemy operates in deception, right? So the same way you looked up masturbation, is masturbation good for me, right? The benefits of masturbation. He already pre-planned this
Right.
to the point where when you looked it up, the world already told you that it was okay, even though you knew it was a sin.
Yeah.
The same way Eve already knew what God had said, yet the enemy crept up and said, you can't. That decision. Do I seek the world for comfort or do I seek God for the cure?
What's up, everybody, and welcome back to Equally Yoked
Podcast. And today, we want to talk about how you can overcome and win the battle against lust. And before we even get into the nitty gritty, my own perception and how I dealt with lust and how I'm dealing with it moving forward is understanding that lust is a symptom, right? It is not necessarily the disease, but it's a symptom from it. And like anytime I've looked at, like if it's like masturbation, pornography, other women, all these other things, I've realized that it's not necessarily those things that I struggle with, but it's something deeper. That's just a superficial way of looking at it. That is just like how I'm dealing with that process. But like the deeper thing is something that I feel like a lot of us haven't even dealt with, or we've been ignoring the deeper thing because it's so much easier to go to the world to find comfort instead of going to God for the cure.
Yeah.
But like for you personally, like how has lust been for you? Like how does it show up in your life before me, after me? Just talk about your own experience with lust.
Yeah, so going off before you,
Yeah.
the way lust like look for me is more of having a checklist of what like I wanted a man to look like. So whether that be, have the six pack, be this certain height, just more of the just all physical.
Yeah.
So that's what it looked like for me. And I was just like so focused on that. And then like, just going out there in the world, you see a man that you see that was like on that list of, well, the physical things are on that list, and you're like, ooh, and just right there, just full of lust, not even caring about what's on the inside, not caring about the heart.
Yeah.
You know what I mean? So that's kind of how lust look like for me when it comes to, I guess you would say relationship wise.
For me is like I said, like I didn't have necessarily like the same kind of like checklist. To me, it's just like if my main thing was like just be like if she was physically attractive,
Yeah.
then like and however that came, you know, like I always say like God is like the best artist. So like if I ever look at the sky, you can see how great God's art is. If you ever look at women, you can see how great God is at creating. But yeah, for me it was like different ways. But it was always like as I look back, because hindsight is always 2020, I realized that what got me like started very strong in lust didn't even have to do with the lust itself, but more of like the people that I hung out with. Because like it's crazy. I never even had to like never even thought about this. I never even had to like say this out loud. But like I think like my first like interaction with like pornography was like it was like either like elementary or middle school, like very early. And I didn't even understand it. I just heard that other people were doing it. And it was almost like that little, I wasn't super like conforming yet, but it was kind of, because I was like, what?
Yeah.
You know what I mean? To the whole idea of like what even needs to take place. Didn't even make sense. But then I started getting at that fear of missing out, kind of, and then like, not to get too in my business, but like one day I was like, I'm just gonna be so committed to see
Yeah.
how this happens. Cause I was like, one time I tried it and I was like, this just takes too long. It's like, this doesn't make any sense. Then one day I was like, I'm just gonna keep going until something happens. And then
I was trying to figure out what you were talking about, but then I got it.
yeah. And then once that happened, it was like instant euphoria. And I was like, oh my gosh, this is what they've been talking about. And after that, it was almost like you're kind of like hooked to try to get that feeling
Yeah.
in like different ways. And like at that time when you're like super young, you're not having sex. So
Yeah.
the only way to get that is to, masturbate and watch pornography and all that stuff. And so like that's like what really like set me on that track. And then something that I feel like just doesn't get talked about enough, and I feel like it's just because it's super taboo, but it's like the addiction that comes with it. And like it's so hard because it's your own body
Yeah.
that you're like it's so easy to deny that you're addicted. But like when you're getting like the cravings and you feel like your body is telling you to do these things,
Yeah.
even when you don't want to, letting us know like when Jesus says that the flesh is weak but the spirit is willing, right? It lets us know that he understands the human condition, that regardless of like spiritually we want to obey God, right? But in the end, our flesh is weak. Our flesh has its own desires. And I feel like everybody has had that experience or eventually will have that experience of that post-nut clarity, of that even when you're in the act of doing it, when you're like, this is not right, right? There is something that has to change. I have to change because this can't be what God is calling me for.
Yeah.
Or just even sometimes before you even like have a relationship with God, you feel this like
Like, oh, why did
conviction.
I do this?
Yeah, this like weight on your shoulders. And it's like, this was supposed to be something to make you feel good.
Yeah.
And now you feel awful.
Exactly. I mean, not to rewind a little bit, but when you're brought up, like, just like the fear of missing out,
Yeah.
that reminded me because, I mean, I wasn't introduced to like pornography or anything like that, like at the age you were. I was more like clueless for the for the longest. Um, so when I got into high school, I think that's when I started hearing like more conversations. There was a time on when we were riding the bus, we were going to a basketball game or leaving, whichever one it was, and like they were in the back watching porn, and I like didn't see it. Yeah, I know, out of all the things, but
As a group?
as a group, but but anyway, so like I didn't see any of it, but it was like, like
Yeah.
wonder what that looks like. They're all having fun and kikiing
Yeah.
back there. So yeah, so that was like one of the times, and then obviously like there would be conversations that people would have about their experiences in high school, and of course I wasn't doing any of that in high school at all. But it was still more of those like kind of you're intrigued, you want to learn,
Sure.
and like I said before, I didn't know anything. So then that's when I got curious. I was like, I haven't like my parents haven't really talked to me about it. Like we turn on the TV and like if one sex scene comes up, fast forward.
Uh-huh.
So it was more of like, and then also it's like your parents always tell you, don't have sex, don't do this, don't do that. But it's like, what even
Yeah.
happens, what is it, like you're just telling me not what to do, but like why, you know?
Mm-hmm.
Well, obviously we don't want to have a kid at that young age, but you know what I mean? So it was just more of like curiosity. So then that's when I would like go on Google, and like I was just more interested. It was like I was studying, researching, like just trying to figure out things, and then I'm like, oh, okay, this is what people are talking about.
Mm-hmm.
But yeah, I mean, for me, it wasn't more of like there was no really like type of like addiction or anything like that. It was just me trying to figure things out and not feeling like I was lost or I guess quote unquote like behind everyone else. But yeah, I mean that's how it was for me. But and then also like you were talking about how when it came to like masturbation or whatever, you just sit back and you're like, why did I do this? There's been shoot plenty of times. Well, not I won't say plenty of times like I do it like so often. But anyway, yeah, there was times where I'm just like, why did I ever do this? Like, what was the point?
Yeah.
And then I just sit there and I'm like right after like talking to God, like, Lord, please forgive me for this. Like, this isn't this isn't what I wanted to do.
Mm-hmm.
Even like what a few minutes before, I was all for it.
Yeah. That's the crazy thing. I think what really made me want to do this today is because even today I had the feeling of like masturbate.
Yeah.
And I'm like, what? You know, because it's like, it's one of those things where it's like, you don't even have to be horny
Yeah.
or like even be like in that space
Mm-hmm.
of like, there was nothing that even provoked you.
Mm-hmm.
Well, I will say this, you get indirectly influenced simply through like social media, films,
Mm-hmm.
all these different things that we watch. It indirectly, because a lot of these things, like, they're either showing you something that you desire or it's creating the emotion attached to it.
Mm-hmm.
And so like you weren't necessarily like feeling lustful, but then you watch that movie and that movie has sex scenes and then that
Yeah.
within your brain started working on you, you didn't even know it.
Mm-hmm.
Right? Or like you're scrolling on social media and then you see somebody who checks those boxes,
Mm-hmm.
right? And you weren't even looking at social media for this particular thing, but then that could trigger you.
Yeah.
And that's why I say before, like, it's so much deeper than just like the superficial.
Mm-hmm.
It has to do with dealing with the actual thing. And for me, I feel like a lot of it had to do with had to deal with just lack of confidence. Especially when I was like just like in the beginning, it was like the lack of confidence. It was as a boy and moving into like a man, like you get praise
Mm-hmm.
for like expressing your sexuality,
Yeah.
right? At least in this culture, you get praise for that. If it's getting yeah, if it we're gonna talk about it. If it's getting like nudes from girls, or if it's like actually doing a sexual act with women,
Mm-hmm.
like you get praise from other people, and it's mainly because I feel like they're like living through you,
Yeah.
and so everybody's like, oh my gosh, blah 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 blah, and like then you kind of not only is it like sometimes a euphoric sense, and you get like the release of endorphins and all that stuff from actually doing the act, but then you get the praise from other people from performing it and doing that thing too, and then telling them all about it. You know what I mean? And so then you kind of get stuck in that cycle, and then for me, like I said, it was like definitely like a lack of confidence, because in other places where I was losing in life, like in sexuality, I could win. And so I'm like, now instead where I'm falling short here,
Mm-hmm.
I can overcompensate in a different area. And I feel like that's what really was triggering me in the as I began doing it. But then when I got like older and older and older, it started to be less of that, because I started getting into more committed relationships. Like before, I've told you that like I never would date a girl, and then I started getting into committed relationships, and then I was sinning, right? Sexual immorality. I was having sex. I was doing all the things, and then I no longer needed pornography.
Mm-hmm.
but yet I was still watching porn. And it was like that look into the mirror kind of thing of like, I might be addicted, right? But not wanting to admit that you're addicted.
Yeah, because who does want to admit?
Nobody wants to admit that you're an addict to anything,
Yeah.
or that anything has a real hold on you. But like, whenever there's a beck and call and it's saying masturbate, watch porn, and you're like, okay, you know what I mean? Like, there was times like I feel like I told you this, but there was like times where like I was like watching porn or masturbating, and like I was like, obviously like you're hiding it, but I was like doing it in like the most random places.
Oh my gosh.
And it had a lot to do with the fact that like whenever that feeling came about,
You were just like, oh, let's
I was like,
time to get it up with.
yeah, it was almost like, okay, it was almost like
To-do list.
exactly a morning or whatever to-do list.
That's so bad.
And I was like, okay, I haven't checked this off today. And like, it's funny to say it now because I've overcome that.
Yeah.
But in that moment of like, that was just so normal for me. Or when I was trying to get over it, it was so depressing.
Yeah.
Because it was like, I really can't control this. I'm really stuck in this place. And like, I can't tell anybody about it. And like, it's your body, so you feel like you have control. You feel like you can do it on your own. And honestly, like the way that I was able to kind of do it, like some discipline and self-control things were like, I wouldn't go into the bath, like honestly, I wouldn't go to the bathroom with my phone. Like I was like, this is an instant trigger. Like, so I have to like, if I'm going to be going to the bathroom, I have to like leave my phone out of the thing, right? But like some things was in place, but honestly, the biggest thing that like helped me the most was just actually having a relationship with God.
Yeah.
Because there's some things in us, there's some holes, there's some gaps that only God can fill. And once I started doing the deep work, instead of just the superficial things, because when it's superficial, you're like, okay, all I gotta do is just stop watching porn. All I gotta do is stop masturbating. That's easy. It's literally a decision. But then once you find yourself constantly going through that cycle, and now it's no longer fun, now it's no longer like, oh my gosh, I'm getting this euphoric sense, but now it's like, I gotta do it, and then after I do it, I gotta do it again and again and again, and now I can't say no to myself. Now I can't refuse my flesh. And that's why the Bible tells us so much we have to deny and die to our flesh so that we can be reborn and walk in the spirit. And like that was like my biggest like turnaround aspect, but it all started with really developing a real relationship with God.
Yeah.
But I'll let you go, but like there's so much more that I've dealt with. But go ahead.
Yeah. I mean, it was just interesting to hear your perspective, and like not only your perspective, but like a man's perspective, because like I think people forget, although like, we always hear, oh, men get praise for their body counts, but if a man has seven bodies, and then a woman has seven bodies, the woman is like,
Yeah, shame.
ashamed. So it was very interesting to hear your like perspective of things with that. And I feel like for women, obviously we wouldn't be doing those for those reasons, to be praised, because obviously it's the quite opposite. But I think sometimes for us, like it's more of, we can please ourselves. We don't need a man to please us. So I think that's sometimes when we get caught up in things, and you can even go look online. Like I've seen so many like different like women, and like make videos about this, or just, you can go Google it and see it for yourself too. But when it talks about like, oh, look, it's healthy for women to masturbate, like it like does this for you, and I can't remember the specific things that it says, but it just basically talks about how it's healthy for you, and it like improves your
The
health.
devil is a liar.
I know, exactly. And it's just like you said, it can become addicting for like anybody, because you get that pleasure.
Yeah.
And so, yeah, and then like for me, like of course, like I've done it before. That hasn't been like addicting or anything like that.
Yeah.
But and there was a time where I was in that position. I had looked up. It was like, oh, like what's the benefits of like masturbation? And then like I got tricked into thinking, okay, like this is supposed to be good for me. I know this, that everyone says this is a sin, but get Google saying it's good for me.
Ooh, man, the enemy is working.
Exactly. So I'm sitting there like I made an excuse for myself.
No, for sure.
And that was, and I was looking for that excuse.
Yeah.
I knew it was a sin, but as soon as I got that excuse and I got that approval, I ran with it.
Yeah.
And so I had to like sit back, like you said, and it was just like, all right, we know the truth. Like we're not dumb. Like, come on.
Bible says the truth will set you free.
Yeah. And so for me, it was just all about being obedient and just following what God has said that we need to follow.
Yeah.
You know what I mean? So, I mean, like you said before, you still have those feelings because it's human nature. It's a natural emotion, but it's just what we do with that emotion. You know what I mean? So, like for me, whenever that emotion comes up or and stuff like that, I rebuke the mess out of it.
Come on now. Come on.
I sit there, I will pray it away.
Yeah.
I have that emotion, like I said, pray. I will turn on gospel Christian music, just do things that switch the gears in my head to stop thinking about and stop allowing the flesh to speak to me. Rather, and like I want the spirit to speak to me, not my flesh.
Amen.
And so that's just some of the things that I do, which has helped tremendously. And then, like, the more I continue to do that and focus on that, like, the less I would feel that the flesh trying to attack me.
Yeah.
Like, there'd be weeks, months where I wouldn't even it wouldn't even cross my mind.
Right.
Now, like I say before, it'll come back, it'll creep back up, like it'll touch you, like, let's see if you stay faithful. But yeah, man, just like pray, do anything, open that Bible. Literally, you have that, get up, grab that Bible, start reading, and I tell you, it'll go away just like that.
I think I like the way there's so much revelation that hit me. That's why I couldn't even hold it back. It was so much revelation.
Oh my goodness.
Like, first, I think the first revelation was man, it might be leaving my head, but the second one was when you said it'll creep back up on you. And when you said that, I started thinking about just how the serpent creeped up on Eve, right? And like in the garden and was tempting her to literally, oh my gosh, if we think about it, this is how the enemy operates. The enemy operates in deception, right? So the same way you looked up masturbation, is masturbation good for me, right? The benefits of masturbation. He already pre-planned this to the point where when you looked it up, the world already told you that it was okay, even though you knew it was a sin.
Yeah.
The same way Eve already knew what God had said. Adam already told Eve. Eve knew that she could not eat from this tree. Yet the enemy crept up and said, you can. He literally said that you wouldn't die if you eat from it, right? The same way you are looking for the out, the enemy will give you the out. Now it depends if you take the out, right? Because the enemy only needs a foothold. So will you walk in the enemy's direction? Even though you know that craving, like when that temptation comes upon you that you shouldn't walk into it, it literally is that decision. Do I seek the world for comfort or do I seek God for the cure, right? And then the other revelation, I can't remember what you were saying though, because it was just
Probably it was about like the spirit or the flesh.
It was the truth will set you free.
Oh yeah.
Right? The freedom of understanding like God has already broken every chain. Right? And Jesus has already freed us from our sins. We are no longer slaves to that sin. And once you seek the truth, you actually can step into the real freedom,
Right.
right? Regardless of it, we're going to be a slave to something, but we have to choose. Are we going to be a slave to the world and to the enemy in his own lies from the pit of hell, in his own deception of lack and everything not of this world, so now we have to seek the world for, to be fulfilled? Or are we going to be a slave of God and be obedient to his will, be obedient to his commandments, his statutes, and what he calls us to be, right? And we can, once you start making that decision, I'm not going to say you're going to be perfect, because you're not going to be perfect.
Yeah.
We all fall short. Even that's why I have to say today, I got hit with the temptation, right?
Yeah.
But in that moment, I started speaking life into my situation. I started saying that regardless if I do this, I will not allow myself to step into subsiding pleasure that I know will only equal sustaining pain. I will actually decide to step into something that will be everlasting and that will never subside, which is God. God is here. He is the creator of the heavens and the earth, and he's the creator of the ends of the earth, which means he's the Alpha and Omega, right? If I walk into what God has for me, then I know that I will not only enter and have the fruits of the Spirit, but then I know that it's a better walk for my life.
Yeah.
There's something higher that he's calling me to. And that's the biggest thing. I had to start calling myself higher. I was like, this is not what God created you for.
Not at all.
This is beneath you. This is not what he wanted for his creation. That understanding, once you start reading the Bible, you realize the sacred of what sex even is, right? And that it's only supposed to be taking place in a godly union.
Yeah.
Then you realize that I'm robbing myself. And not only am I robbing myself, but I'm also robbing God. Simply because I am not allowing myself to allow God to work. I'm being my biggest enemy. And it's crazy because it goes back to the saying of that your biggest enemy is sometimes your enemy. And I think that was like even our own revelation too. Because when we were falling into sexual sin and sexual immorality, we said a couple of times that we're going to stop.
Oh my goodness.
We're going to stop. And that we're going to wait for marriage, because we knew in the end that this was a union that God had predestined.
Yeah.
We knew that from the day we met each other. Well, not the day we met each other, but I feel like once we actually got to know each other a little bit more, we knew that that was like the thing. But we knew that we had to let that go. And I feel like there were so many other things that we were willing to like let go. And when I say let go, I never really mean it in a form of sacrifice, because it never feels like sacrificing. It's just letting go so that we can let God operate in our lives. And so when we let go of the sex, and it allowed more space for a different type of intimacy.
Yeah. And to go with that, like, I just want to first off say, like, you talking about it, it makes it sound like it was like such a easy transition when it was
multiple
not.
failure.
Like, just even in the beginning, like, I was like, all right, no, this is not something we should do.
Yeah.
Stopped for a little bit. Then it was like, this one time won't hurt. I mean, just like how we were talking about when you're talking about like masturbation, it's just that cycle of like just listening to the flesh. But I'm so glad we got to the point where we just literally cut ties. Like, we just broke it off and we're like, forget it. But yeah, it made our relationship so much stronger, because when you take that away, you can actually sit back and learn so much more about each other rather than just like sexual desires or whatever. Like, I felt like we got to experience like new things together, like just go and have new activities. We sit down, talk about so many like just different topics, like just random stuff, just getting to know each other. Like, when you take away all that extra stuff, you can really truly learn so much about like someone else. And then too, you take away those sexual desires, you know, you can learn about what you don't like about that person, because when you hop into the relationship and you're just all about sex, sometimes you can be blinded to how
all
that
all the
person
time.
truly, yeah, how that person truly is. And
Yeah.
you end up liking that person from the pleasures that that you get from them,
Yeah.
not who they are intellectually, what they do, what their passions are, all that other stuff. So just being able to take that out of a relationship, and I mean, the Bible, God tells us, He gives us literally the answers, He gives us the steps,
Mhm.
but sometimes we just bump that to the side. But it's like when you follow what God's plan is, what He says, like,
Come on.
oh, it is so much better than what the world offers. Like,
Come on.
just sit and listen. I will tell you, like, things will go in the right way.
Yeah, like once you strip that sex from your relationship and like before marriage, if you strip that away, it makes your relationship bare bones.
Mm-hmm.
And because like there's so much carried from sex
Mm-hmm.
because it's such a godly thing.
Yeah.
Like you're literally we're created with the right pieces for each other. You know what I mean? So it's such a a divine activity. But at the end of the day, it's supposed to be under the union for it to be
Yeah.
righteous. And so once you strip it away, you get to see your relationship for what it is.
Mm-hmm.
And a lot of relationships are only being held on to the string of sex, right? Because they haven't replaced lust with love.
Mm-hmm.
And so until that happens, you're tricking yourself. You're deceiving yourself of thinking that you actually love this person simply because you've allowed the lust to blind you, right?
Yes.
Going back to what you're saying. And once that lust, I mean, because lust is so powerful, it's so strong, it makes people do all crazy kinds of things.
Crazy things. I've heard people so many times like, "Oh, I can't leave him. The sex is too good." Like,
Yeah.
what?
Yeah, like you
But he's out there cheating on you, doing all this, doing all that, but you can't leave him because the sex is good.
oh
Like,
man,
what?
there's actually a whole song about that.
Right.
When we realized that like she's whenever you hear that, you hear it's basically you hearing their own I won't say addiction, but you're hearing them express their own enslavement to it.
Mm-hmm.
I can't leave him because the sex is too good, saying that she's chained to the lust.
Mm-hmm.
She can't leave the lust, right? So she's found because of what the lust brings, she's now enslaved herself to it. Even though everything else, all the fruits of it is very evident that this is not the person for you,
Mm-hmm.
right? But despite the evidence, you can't see clearly because the lust has blinded you, allowing you to be deceived and not even walk in the truth.
Yeah, and because the world just thinks it's okay. Like you said before, there's music about it.
Yeah.
Like you go on the internet and like you'll see somebody like make a video about like, oh, like I said just before, I can't leave him because the sex is too good. You go in the comments like, girl, I know, right? Like,
Mm-hmm.
what?
It's other people going through the same thing, but it's also to remember that the enemy's been here since the beginning.
Mm-hmm.
So he knows our ways. He knows that the flesh is weak. So that means he's going to infiltrate into the music and who and what you tune into is who you turn into.
Yep.
And so it starts validating, like you said before, you're looking for that way. If you look for that, if you're looking down that path, you're going to find that thing,
Mm-hmm.
right? So if you're looking for a reason for why you can stay or a reason for why masturbation is good, the world's going to have a reason for you.
Mm-hmm.
Right? Even if you looked it up, and I promise you can look it up right now. If masturbation is good for me or something like that,
It'll say something about
click
how
enter
it is.
and it will say yes. You know what I mean? It will say that it's good for your libido. It's good for
Chemical
this. It's good.
balances.
It helps with reduce stress and anxiety and all these things. And although it has proven some evidence of that, there's not been a long-term study, or there probably has been, but it's not publicized for us to see that the long-term effects is addiction. The long-term effects is depression. The long-term effects is anxiety, is stress, because our own bodies are operating against us. because the body keeps count, and if the body's keeping count, it knows when we have
And erectile dysfunction.
oh my gosh, that's what I was getting to. That was where I was getting to. When I said there's so much other things,
Yeah.
like even in my old past relationships, like because I watched so much pornography. I'm gonna be honest, and men, women out here, please listen. That and hopefully this is like I'm airing out all my stuff.
You really are.
But I'm really doing it because I feel like I feel like the spirit is leading me to do so, and I feel like me. I just the amazing thing is God can turn your embarrassment into your breakthrough, and He can also allow that breakthrough to be the breakthrough for somebody else. Yeah. And if I can live in my truth, then that allows other people the possibility and the freedom to do so also.
Yep.
So the truth of the thing is, like when I was in my other relationships, because I watched pornography so much, and it started messing up my own brain. It started messing up like I could be in the sexual act and my brain would be so messed up because it's not what I saw. It's not like the videos. And because it's not like the videos, like now I'm getting turned off in the middle of the sexual act. So like it's not just like the problem with like pornography and masturbation is that it's not a it's not like a substitution of the actual thing. It is the thing. And so if you're being like, it's technically it's like you're being asexual because you're having sex with yourself. So if you're being asexual, you will start programming your body and your mind to only seek pleasure from you. So then when you have another partner to actually have the sex with, let's just say you get married and you have the covenant with the thing, and now you can have sex. Now you can't even perform your marital duties simply because your mind is all messed up. Your mind and your body. And that's why I was starting to find myself with like I was having erectile dysfunction. Like it was so weird. And like I'm saying I was having erectile dysfunction. I'm very young. I'm 23. I was having erectile dysfunction at 19. I was having
That's not funny, but
I was at 18, 17, 18, 19 having problems, erectile dysfunction simply because like I was watching so much pornography that my brain was just all twisted and confused, and it didn't know what was real and what wasn't. I was having so many like problems. It was like me having to stop watching porn wasn't just, oh yeah, I just gotta get right. I gotta stop. It was like it was like a
bro,
need
chill.
because if I didn't stop watching, I don't know if I would be able to even use
Oh
my
gosh.
stuff for the sexual, you know what I mean? Once I'm under God's covenant.
Yeah.
And like it was that bad, y'all. Like I'm okay saying it now, but it was so hard in that moment to be like, bro, I really am addicted.
But you know what? I am proud of you because it is so hard for people to be like, I'm addicted.
I did want to admit it.
And to stop.
I'll be honest, I didn't.
I'm glad you stopped.
But the truth of it is, it was so much evidence. It was so much evidence that it was like impossible for me to deny it. And it's like, yeah, it was like impossible to deny that I had a problem and I needed
You needed God. You needed some help. No, you needed God.
Yeah, I needed.
Only God could fix that problem that
I
you
didn't
had.
need a little bit more Jesus. I needed all of it. I needed the whole thing. Yeah, I needed Jesus to be my best friend.
Oh gosh.
Simply, I was just like, yeah. So, it was a conflicting time. It was a confusing time. But like, the truth of it was when like I broke up with, well, let's just say we broke up, and not us, but my long-term relationship at the time, and it like placed me into that isolation.
Yeah.
Of like having to get right with myself. And like that was like a big moment. And I say this to implore anybody who's going through a situation. You may be in a relationship that is leading you to sin. to
Yeah.
be in that, even because a lot of couples watch porn with each other.
I was just about to say that too.
And so it's like, if you're in that kind of relationship, I'm not saying that you just need to break up with that person immediately, but like, I would, if this is something that you want to change and you want to actually, you know, overcome lust, you want to actually stop losing the battle, and you want to win the war.
Yeah, those tough conversations.
You
need
have to have
happen.
these tough conversations. Like, a lot of things that I'm saying to her right now, these are not the first time she's heard these things. There's some things that like I had revelation on in this moment, so it was like my first time even noticing it for myself. But like, you have to have these like tougher conversations, and these conversations of change, because she was the first one that was like, she wants to stop having sex until marriage. And then I was the one that was having problems with doing that, but it's because of literally everything before I met her. And I say that to say, like, you have to die to your old self. You have to die to your old sinful self, because it is, the Lord has already saved you. He's already released you from these chains. He's broken every chain. So the only thing we have to do now is take off the shackles.
Yeah.
A lot of times we're enslaving ourselves. We're putting ourselves in the cage. We're putting on our own shackles. And then we're saying we can't get out of them. But there is no one tying us to it. It is just us.
We are our biggest enemies.
Exactly. Like, no one made me watch porn. No one got me addicted to porn except for me. Like, the enemy may have deceived me in some possible ways, but at the end of the day, the enemy, we give too much credit to the enemy. A lot of times we say, that is the devil, that is blah, blah, blah. No, sometimes it's just you.
Right.
Sometimes you're the problem. Sometimes you have to look in the mirror and have that tough conversation with yourself and say, I'm the one who got me here.
Right. Like, stop blaming it on everybody else.
Yeah, you have to take some accountability.
Take ownership.
Yep, ownership, accountability. We want to set everybody else to the fire, but sometimes we have to be able to, not even sometimes, a lot of times, we have to do some self-evaluation, some self and some deep work, and be able to hold ourselves to the fire and say, if I really want to get over the lust, if I really want to get over the sexual immorality, if I really want to get over cheating, if I really want to get over all of these different things, I have to be willing to do the work. No one else can do the work for me, right? But the great thing is, the Lord will guide you.
Yeah.
The Lord will show you. The Lord will send conviction through the Holy Spirit. He won't condemn you, but he will send that conviction. So when you're operating in the ways that are not like his ways, you will feel it in your spirit that, oh my gosh, I knew I shouldn't have done this. Oh my gosh, I knew I shouldn't have talked to her. Oh my gosh, I knew I shouldn't have sent that message. Oh my gosh, I knew I shouldn't blah, 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 blah. Right? You will feel these kind of things, or you shouldn't be watching this, right? You will feel that conviction from the Lord. And then, like I said before, you have to make that decision if you're going to seek the world for comfort or God for the cure. You got anything else you want to add?
I really think you just got on point with everything, really. But I mean, I don't have really much more to add to that. You did a good job telling your story.
Appreciate it. Yeah, I mean, this has been something that I've dealt with for a very long time. And even when I've gotten over certain parts in my life where I felt like, oh yeah, I have a little bit more of a hold, then sometimes you fall back into that sin and you're like, man. And then you think that you've gotten to a point where like, oh, that one time won't matter. And then it builds up.
Yeah.
You know what I mean? And it can be like a snowball effect sometimes. And so the biggest thing is to never allow yourself to do that one time, right?
Yeah.
And what is necessary is you will fall short. There are opportunities and times where you do fall short. We're not perfect. We weren't created.
Yeah, because that's what I was gonna go off and say. Like, give yourself grace. Yeah. Know that it's not gonna happen overnight. Really, nothing happens overnight when you're trying to better yourself.
Nah.
But no, it's all a process, and you will get to that point where you won't even really think about it.
Yeah.
Like, you'll get to that point where you will be okay. You will be fine with literally going out in the world and saying, no, like, I'm celibate, or I'm a virgin, because the world just makes it look so bad for somebody to be a virgin.
Right. 100%.
But go out there with confidence, full confidence, and be okay with, if someone asks you, be okay with saying that. Like, stand firm, because God stands firm for us.
Right.
So we need to stand firm right with him.
But yeah, I feel like this podcast was something.
Yeah.
And I hope I hope that this is something that you can learn from, something that was helpful for you. We appreciate everyone watching this podcast. We appreciate y'all tuning in. We appreciate, our podcast listeners and our YouTube watchers. And we'll see y'all on the next episode. Peace.
Peace.